Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call our October 13th, 2022 school committee meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Thank you very much. We have posted a consent agenda. We have the minutes from the September 29th, 2022 meeting, as well as an oath to bills and payroll. I'd love to entertain a motion to accept those.
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Ms. Gold. Second. Seconded by Mr. Austin. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Terrific. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. We'll see if we have anybody in the room. Perfect. Mr. Gillen, thank you for joining us this evening. If you would just state your name, your address, and then the floor is yours.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Gillen. My address is 58 Wedge Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. So thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak. I'm a chemistry teacher at the high school and here speaking to you on behalf of Littleton teachers, in particular about a ballot question that's coming up in November. So ballot question 1 is a ballot question that has the potential to have a large impact on public education in our state, a large positive impact, I should say, on public education in our state. And so Littleton teachers are urging you to support voting yes on ballot question 1. Ballot question 1 would create a tax on ultra wealthy. That's people who make more than $1 million each year, not people who over years have accumulated $1 million of wealth, but people who are pulling in more than $1 million each year. Only individuals affected by that. And then to devote that tax money to public education and public transportation. And Littleton teachers felt strongly about speaking out about that to you in particular, because the money raised from ballot question 1 could do a lot of good for Littleton students. Things like reducing class size, increasing access to arts, music, improving facilities. There's a lot of good that could be done with that money. And we felt strongly about speaking out about that. And it's not just for Littleton students once they're in Littleton or while they're in Littleton. The money could also be devoted to public colleges and universities, which could help to reduce tuition, help with student debt, and could at least be a step towards making something like universal pre-K a reality in our state. And so there are a lot of Littleton families that can benefit from that as well. And so, I mean, that's really kind of the bulk of what I came here to say. We think the money raised from ballot question 1 could do a lot of good for Littleton students, and we are encouraging you to support voting yes on ballot question 1. Any questions, or that's the section works?
So, I mean, it could be, we can, I personally don't have any, but Jen or Brad or Stacy.
I don't. I appreciate you making us aware of it and sharing it with us. I think that's great. Agreed. Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Okay, just well, quick pause to see if we have anybody else present or anybody zooming in that wishes to speak at this opportunity. There's another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Looks like we're okay for now. We'll move on to a recognition portion of the meeting. John's not able to join us this evening, I suppose, so we won't hear from our student representative, but the superintendent has a number of recognition.
Thank goodness I have something to bring to the table.
Absolutely.
You bet. First thing I'd like to talk about, the MSBA contacted Principal Kane and myself to attend a meeting in Harvard, the Hildreth Elementary School over a year and a half ago. We were able to hear from the building committee, the architect, the project manager, and tour the school. It was a great experience. We came back with a lot of knowledge and really a lot of positive takeaways. So just wanted to share that with you. We brought a pamphlet back, the new school. If you're ever in Harvard, when the school is open, you should really stop by and take a look at it. In terms of awareness for Michelle and I, it's really important when we get to that stage of the process to take some time to identify schools and go out and tour them. It's amazing how much you pick up from these schools when you go through some of the special things that they've designed to meet their needs. So I think that needs to be part of what we do as a building committee. Glad we have the opportunity to do that this morning.
Was that funded, I'm sorry, was that funded through the same process that we're
Yes.
starting? Okay.
Right, and there are a number of other districts were there. They're in various stages, and there are 4 districts that were at the same stage that we are. A couple were ready for the sustainability study, so it was nice to meet those people as well. Time well spent.
Great.
And the second recognition, I'd like to recognize Detective Giannakis. On Wednesday, LPD had a ceremony for John, and I just want to thank John for his commitment to our community and everything that he did for our staff and students. He was an incredible SRO. We're going to miss him a lot. I hear he's going to be working part-time every now and again, so we'll still see him around. But we're so fortunate to have John as part of our staff as an SRO. So best wishes to John, and good, best of luck as you start a new life journey.
Thank you.
Third recognition, some of you probably saw the clip from Channel 5 News about Jenna Kivlin, more correctly. She did a great job when she was interviewed by Channel 5, and she's just so impressive. She's an incredible young lady, and they also interviewed some football players as well. Our high school students on the football team just represented our school and school district so well, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes playing that clip for you in case you didn't see it. Certainly worth seeing again if you know.
High school football is won and lost in the trenches. That battle decided on the line of scrimmage. And to beat the odds stacked against her, yes, her, Littleton's Jenna Kivlin has overcome a mountain of adversity. Not everyone thought she should play football.
I would just get my size thrown in my face a lot and just be told I wasn't ready.
But Jenna knew she was, and she knew it starting at age 8.
I thought I had a cheerleader. I only had one for a year. She said she wanted to play football the next year. I thought it was a phase, and here we are 10 years later.
Linebacker!
Jenna plays both ways. There she is, number 57, a senior and pulling left guard, making a kick block to free her running back for a big gain and a touchdown. And on D, she's on the nose, a run stopper. But don't take all the praise from me. Sometimes it's your teammates who really know what you bring to the table.
For people that say she's a girl that plays football, I just think of her as one of my teammates. She's almost just like one of the guys. She fits in so well. No one treats her like she's a girl. Everyone will hit her as hard as they can every play, and she hits back. So it's great having her on the team.
Try to just leave it out of our minds that she's a girl. She's just another teammate.
I like having to fight through things. I've always liked proving people wrong, I guess.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Tough, dedicated, just one of the guys, just another teammate playing tackle football, playing it well, proving people wrong, and proving herself right. In Littleton, Josh Brogadier, WCVB Sports Center 5.
Great coverage.
Excellent. That's a really nice piece. Congratulations to Jenna and the rest of the football team. They represented us very, very well there.
Yes.
That's it for
Good. Perfect. Thanks very much. All right. So we've got a number of presentations this evening, 4 in total. We're going to start with a review of Strategic Plan Standard 4, Goal 1. School safety, an update from resource officer, police chief won't be here, Safety and Security Advisory Committee regarding the school and district safety plan. School resource officer Meg Brzezinski and other members of the LPD staff will give an overview of school safety training and procedures. So we invite you to the podium. Thanks for being here tonight. We're leaving you behind.
I'll call them. Good evening. You guys want me to state my name as well?
No, you don't have to. You're good.
For those that don't know me, I'm Detective Megan Brzezinski. I've been a part of the police department for the last 7 years as patrol. And recently, Mr. Punchy said, I'm replacing John Giannakis, the school resource officer. So I'm here to just give you guys a brief overview of the critical incident occurred in our town, specifically in our schools. At this point, our school district abides by Dallas concepts. It is accepted by the Department of Homeland Security as well as the Mass Chiefs of Police Association. ALICE is an acronym for a method to respond to a violent intruder situation. It is a proactive approach program that provides additional options beyond the single response of lockdown. The A in ALICE stands for alert. This is first awareness of a danger. You guys are good.
Yeah.
We got you.
That could be anything from screaming, gunshots, any loud noises. The L is for lockdown, which is secure in place if the intruder is close by. Barricade the doors and spread out within the room. I is for inform, which is continuous communication of the intruder's location in real time. C is for counter. This is not fighting. It's taking back control. It's age appropriate and it's a personal choice. This is used as a last resort and only if the intruder is in the room. And by counter, we mean throwing objects, pencils, staplers, books, stuff of that nature. E is for evacuate, get away from the danger zone when safe to do so and get to your rally point. The strategies I just described can be used in any order and allow you to rely on your own judgment. In the high school and middle school, we run 2 scenarios in conjunction with staff that are age appropriate for the students. In the elementary schools, we have a discussion with the students about being safe without scaring them. We can conduct the trainings much like fire drills. This training is designed to prepare the children for unsafe situations in comfortable, colorful language that takes their youth into consideration. We rely on our teachers a lot with this age group. They have a better understanding of their learning and how to speak their language. This is more of a stranger danger conversation. Listen to your teachers and trusted adults in times of emergency. We also utilize children's books in this age group and specifically utilize the children's books, children's book, I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared. And again, in the elementary schools, we run scenarios that are age appropriate. Ideally, these drills are completed once or twice a year. In doing these drills, we hope to prepare students to respond with confidence during an active shooter situation and make good survival decisions should an attack occur. Not only in the school environment, but everyday locations as well. That's it. Questions?
I think probably so. Stacey, you want to start?
Yeah, the only question I had with the doors being barricaded, how is the staff and students barricading doors in the event that something is happening in the school?
Through various ways. Most of the doors lock. There are a few, specifically in Shaker Lane, which is something that we need to address. After doing a run through the schools, I've noticed that they're very far and few between, but there are some doors that don't have the ability to lock or secure. It's typically conjoining doors, but in every other room, they're to lock the door. And then we give them tools, use tables, chairs, wedges, belts. We give them the tools to secure the door in doors in various ways, depending on whether it's an open hinge that opens out or in. Based on that, we give them the tools to do that.
Has there been given any thought to, like, there's specific devices that some schools use to barricade the doors specifically, so they're not trying to pile furniture up?
I know in the past that has been brought up. I know a lot of the issues that come with that are fire hazards. And I can't speak to that too much. I don't know if Pablo can a little bit more just because he's been here in years past.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Pablo Fernandez. I was also a school resource officer for many years. Mainly what Meg is saying is that there are issues with not necessarily with the fire department, but with the rules and regulations that the schools have to adhere to per fire code. So there have been talks and discussions about devices that are out there that have been developed to coincide with those fire codes. So it's really discussions to see if it fits within the school system. We certainly discuss them at the safety and security meeting, and it's a decision that the town in itself has to kind of decide whether that's the route we go. Kind of just to piggyback off what Meg said, absent any kind of actual device that would be, say, purchased by the town, part of the barricading procedures or discussions in the training is to utilize in the absence of those devices. So like Meg was saying, tables, chairs. These discussions are really for a moment in time to get individuals, students and teachers to think about getting out, thinking about utilizing what's in there, what's around them in the moment, because and it's really teaching about just in the general public as well. So they're not always anywhere we go is there going to be devices like this to better barricade or protect ourselves when the best option is shelter in place. So we don't really have any devices per se at the school, but we talk in these discussions about using our creativity as far as utilizing belts, things like that. And teach about thinking about how doors open in and out. An everyday sneaker can become a wedge. An everyday belt can become a winch to shut to secure doors. Does that help?
Yeah, it seems like maybe something to discuss more on safety and security.
Right.
I want to dig deeper into it, but yeah, I was just curious if there was anything into them. And then my only other question was that our last meeting, we had to test the alarms for the schools. I just wanted to follow up and make sure that.
Yes, so any issues that we've had has been addressed at this point. I know that Show Security came in and they resurrected all issues.
I guess I would ask, like, this is great, thank you. If there are, we get emails from parents periodically, especially when there are incidents at other schools, asking, what are we, just asking about concerns about our school system and what's being done, and we get more SROs. And my question would be, like, who could we direct them to get more detailed information about, plans and, what plans are in place to deal with, if there were any kind of incident.
As far as if I'm hearing you correctly, like questions about the actual specific training.
Just questions in general. I mean, we as a school committee can't answer. We're not informed enough to answer like more detailed questions. So who should we direct them to, or what could we respond?
I think on a day-to-day basis, they can certainly reach out to the police and particularly to Detective Wazinski. She can be reached at the school. She can be reached here at the police department. So she's certainly a source to start at. If we're talking about at the policy level, then parents have questions, and that's for the superintendent and the chief of police to direct those questions. But it's about, what are my kids being taught? I know Meg's, part of her role is to be there to bridge that gap of information and try to get that information to the parents individually. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
And I imagine, if I may, that it's walking the line between assuring the public that we have plans, we're prepared, but without giving up too many kind of operational details. So we don't, so we still can maintain we need the plans to work. I imagine is that the case?
It is the case, yes. So we've been, the police department itself has been proactive with the training of the officers. And I'm speaking for myself, but I think we've been more proactive than many other jurisdictions all over the country. It's always been an item that we prepare for. So, and in terms of that, we do annual yearly trainings with the officers, which is consistent with Department of Homeland Security guidelines as far as responding to an active intruder. So we do have separate apart training from the hours training that our students and our teachers get is the training the officers get, and that's on an ongoing basis.
Great, thank you. Can I ask you another question? First of all, welcome to the district. We're glad to have you. This is John, but glad to have you. I wonder if you could, because a lot of us are new members of the school committee and a lot of the public may be watching. Can you walk us through a day in the life of an SRO? What are you doing? Because it's not all, I assume, preparing for an assault or something like that. So
Honestly, it's the best job in the world. Really, I love kids, and whether that's from preschool to the 12th grade. I've always been somebody who's tried to be involved in the community, and it's an easy connection for me. So depending on my day, if I don't have anything right off the bat, I start at the high school, and I'll meet with the principal and the staff there and make sure everybody's that there's no issues or nothing happened over the weekend. If I'm coming in on a Monday. Typically I'm roaming the halls, hanging out with the kids, getting to know them. I'll hop in at lunch, try to get to know the kids that way. Obviously, if there's an incident that the staff needs assistance with, I'm not there to discipline, but obviously if anything comes up that's criminal nature, that's kind of where I step in. They don't often utilize me more just if I to sit down on conversations, also just get to know kids and their families, and just get a deeper connection, and in the event that something might become more than it is. But so I'll typically go from the high school down to the middle school, and I'll do the same thing there. Try to walk around the schools, make sure the buildings are secure. I do the same thing at high school every morning. I'll do a couple laps around just to make sure all the doors are secured and there's nothing out of place. If I have time, I try to bounce into the Russell Street School, into the Shaker Lane. Again, same things there. It's really just to try to have a positive interaction with the kids. I love having lunch with them. They always, especially if I wear my uniform and the younger kids, they have so many questions. So it's fun to hang out with them. That's typically it. In the past, at the middle school, I used to teach. I haven't in the past couple of years just because of COVID. I taught Project Alert with health teacher Trish Bonacor. Just essentially a drug prevention program. And so that was a really good way for me to interact with kids too. And I definitely look forward to trying to do some more of that in the future. On the lab.
Fantastic. Do you from your own choice, or are you expected to go to like some extracurricular activities? Do you do that kind of
I mean, it's something I would do even if it wasn't in my, job description.
Yeah.
If you will. I love doing that. I've been I've been to all home football games. Trying to get to the soccer and field hockey games. I've been away in tech school for the last 2 weeks, so it's been hard. But I'm back next week and I hope to bounce into all those like type of events. Hopefully go to the plays, stuff like that. So yeah.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Brady has some of my questions. Those are good. Thanks.
They're good because they were yours too.
No, like number one, thank you for your service, everybody. I think with the burning question is kind of response time to, year one individual, we have 4 schools. So response time to the other 3 schools that you might not be at. And, you don't have to give me specifics, but like who's on patrol and what number of responding officers and what would the procedures or protocols be? I mean, I think what the community really wants to hear is, first officer on scene is coming through the door. And is that the case? Because that wasn't the case in Valdi, and that was when we heard from a lot of community members was what's our plan? So
Absolutely.
how does that work?
I mean, I can touch on it briefly. I don't know. Sorry to answer your
Sure.
Come up and say hi, everyone.
I know that's that's the big question.
Might as well speak, right?
I've got easier ones after that, but
Yeah, so, hi, everyone, Doug Landry, I'm a sergeant here, been here for 2013. Speaking to what Paulo was talking about, we have a couple officers here that are active shooter, active threat certified instructors. So we go off to training, in-state, out-of-state, we recertify, we do what we consider best practices. We're constantly updating the instructor training that we can bring back here in the department. We've got I'd like to say, good resource that it's personal, but I'm on a SWAT team. So I'm on a 40-man SWAT team that covers Littleton. So we cover 75 other towns as well, but we're training every Wednesday. So we're getting a ton of tactical training and best practices that I think it's a bring back for our patrol officers as well. So we're doing all of our, mandated training and above and beyond. So I don't really want to speak to I guess I can speak to the tactics of Uvalde. I haven't looked at the after action. I've seen some of the videos. I've heard about it. Obviously, we talk about it in our circles and things. I will tell you that our training is a single officer response, right? It's not waiting for a 4-man dime anymore, or a tactical team at the doorway. If we get there, it's first officer on scene, as you discussed, is going to direct a threat or whatever we want to call it. And we train our officers once they get in, indicators, all that stuff, again, without getting into tactics, but we're actively trying to get in and stop any harm that's being done immediately, right? Again, not getting into tactics, but we understand the difference between barricades and hostage rescue versus active threats, active killing. And that's not just for the SWAT guy. all the time. It's pushed all the way down to our newest patrolman. So, and the training that we do, it's been awesome with the schools. We actually get the schools usually in the summer or during school vacations, and we're doing scenario-based training in the schools that we have. We've got simulation gear. We've got everything we need. We partner with the fire department, and we do rescue task force training as well. So we're always working on our medical as well as our tactical response to all these scenarios, all of our command issues that we might see in these situations. But yeah, so it's been years now. I would imagine I've been teaching the academy for at least 10 years now as well. The best practices are, active shooter, we're going single officer response. Obviously, if there's two of us, we're going together, but whoever's there on patrol fastest. I know Meg could be in the Russell Street School. If something's happening in the high school and there's a patrolman driving by, they're going to go first. They're not going to wait for Meg. We've got keys. We've got what we need to get in, and generally trained to what we do train to make that happen. So.
If I can just add too, there's, just to give you guys kind of an idea of how many people are on the road at a time. We typically have a sergeant and 3 patrolmen per shift. So during the day, you're gonna have at least 4 people on patrol, as well as the admin, which there's 2 of them in there, as well as detectives. So just to give you an idea, again, there's only 1 of me, but there's 10 more coming. So,
Sure.
and the blue lights and everything, we're gonna get there in a matter of minutes, if we're not right around the corner, right, so just to kind of put that in perspective as well.
Right, if I could just add to, if it could be of any comfort to parents, community members that are watching or listening, all the officers are also equipped with the tools to be able to get inside the schools. Immediately, that would be something I know I'd be concerned about as a father is can the officers, like first responders come and can they get to my child in time, or the threat or the harm that's happening in the school? And the answer to that here in Littleton, I can't speak for others, is yes. Every officer is, and that's one of Meg's duties is she, the SRO, but now Meg's duty is to go back and make sure that the equipment, and we won't get into details of what that is, the items for the officers to get access to the schools and in the particular areas in the schools, they all have that, as well as there's other equipment that we have that allows the communication center to also give us real-time information as to what's happening in the schools, so that the officers can have the first responders.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, just that's really reassuring, and I appreciate that. I also love the idea that you're doing active trainings in the buildings themselves so that you're familiar with layouts and stuff. That makes me feel a lot better as a parent.
And it's been really good. We've had a great partnership. We've had the teachers come in, they play our role players for us. And we used to have an Explorer post here where there were younger kids that were involved with the police department. They were often role players for us as well. And it's been really good. So we've got great feedback from the staff as well as the officers on all that stuff. So it's great to get that with the schools. We've done it at the IBM building or whatever it is now at this point. But we're definitely training all the time here. It's one of the, we've got all the equipment we need. We've got great support from the administration to, we're not skimping out on the training, especially today in policing. It's real important. So we're very capable, I think, for sure.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
really reassuring.
Thank you for that very thorough answer. So Meg, you kind of touched on this where you were at the high school and you check all the doors, which is terrific, because one of my questions was, does either the safety committee or does the LPD like occasionally perform an audit of all exterior doors of all 4 schools just to make sure that we're always secure?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we do day to day. And obviously we do come across issues, which is very far and few between. They're addressed immediately. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's an audit, unless otherwise. But that's something that is addressed every single day.
Okay.
And like I said, very far and few between. Have there been issues? And if there have been, I notify either the assistant principal or the principal, and it's addressed immediately. And since the beginning of the year, I've been gone for the last 2 weeks, but up until the point that I left, we had very few issues with it. So it is something that we are alert to, and I will be alert to every single day. But like I said before, I'm only one person, and I can only be at the school so often. But when I am there, that is definitely something that I'm checking on a daily basis.
Gotcha. And then my
Can I
last,
just follow up?
are you sure?
You did mention that there is a school that does have some doors that don't lock. Is that something that's come up this week?
It's come up in the past, and it was brought up again, recently before I left. And it is something that I do plan on bringing up at the next meeting.
They're not exterior doors.
They're not, sorry, they're not exterior, they are interior doors. Specifically, one example, just at Shaker Lane, in the library to the computer lab, that door does not latch. So that's just obviously an issue that needs to be addressed and. Again.
Yeah, exterior versus
Yeah.
interior.
Yeah, there you go.
They go to a few alarm calls at the school and we're not getting in. We check all the doors and I think the heater moves the paper every once in a while on the
Right.
wall or something. It's very secure.
So to the best of my knowledge, every front entry is sort of a double door system where you need to be buzzed in the first door. But sort of once you're in, like, you know, so I know that there's a we've all, we're parents, we've been on the camera, we say we're so-and-so here to see so-and-so. And I'm just wondering, like, best practices, are you seeing from the industry where there's actually a buzz to get into like a vestibule? Or maybe I've seen some newer schools where there's like a window where you can sort of get a better understanding of who this person is, kind of like size them up. And then there's like another buzz to get into the actual school building. I mean, is Littleton Police Department comfortable with our single buzz entry system where once you're in, and you're in off of a camera and the person that's buzzing you in, it's not necessarily close to where
Sure.
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, I don't know how much that I can really speak to that. I mean, I do think that it is a good system. I think that there is probably always better systems. I think what it comes down to is obviously finances.
Yeah.
But I think that what we have now in place has been working and hasn't been an issue. And I think we're going to continue to do that. And hopefully it never becomes an issue.
Right. Okay. Everybody good?
Good, Zach, because we're here, and just maybe because we're, for the community at large. We do make it a point and our partnership has been that good that when we have a new officer that we hire, part of field training is to get into all the schools. Our FTOs take them to the schools, they do walkthroughs right away, with all of them, we memorize the new officers. And then, we're not trying to, how do I say, we don't want to disrupt school, but I feel like we're always welcome at the school, even besides Megan, I've been up there for lunch before, and just off a day shift. And the staff has always been so welcoming, and we just try to walk around. So it's not just Meg that's probably in the schools all the time. We different things where during the daytime too, we're trying to tell our officers, please, instead of just doing traffic somewhere, let's go get in the schools a little bit. And that's been fine for the staff has been welcoming on that, and the officers have enjoyed it as well. So
Yeah, that's terrific to hear.
Yeah. Thank you.
thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Kelly, one more question, I think for you maybe, which would be just referencing the district strategic plan as it relates to this, which is publishing the schedule of safety and security advisory committee meeting dates and minutes from this meeting. So is that something that we make available to the public? I just haven't seen those posted before.
They're more of an internal meeting
Okay,
for them to be productive. I mean, if we had to publish minutes or have an open meeting, it would be an ineffective committee, because when we come together, you have to talk about strategies, et cetera, that we can't disclose to the public inside. So
sure.
we have our police department there, our fire department, and if we had other people there that they didn't know why they were there, they rightly so, they wouldn't be as open. So it's something that we haven't struggled with, but we recognize that it isn't really a school committee subcommittee. It's more of an internalized operational committee with school committee representative, which I think is important. So we really couldn't disclose some of the things that we're talking about in there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. In the event that the school committee representative, being Stacy at this point, has access to some of that information, maybe it would make sense to be able to just share it with the rest of the committee. So we're able to evaluate this measure of success. And it's not Stacy the only one that's able to evaluate it. Maybe we could even come in and review them in person in your office, like hard copy, and then.
Or that's something maybe we talk about in the executive session sometime if we needed to, again, where we don't want to make it. The people's representatives probably should know about some of these plans,
Right.
but not broadcast them on.
No, and I'm not gonna know all of the strategies myself, nor should I. The Superintendent of schools, but I'm not on the police department where they have these strategies that they really can't share. So, I mean, we all do what we can, but we in no way can jeopardize the strategies that we have in place, because if they become public knowledge, then effectively, I mean, there's so many things to think about. It's very complex, and you know, there are so many scenarios that you have to think about. We think about every day that we're in our schools, because we're all thinking about safety. That's our top priority. So we'll do what we can. I mean, if there's ever an opportunity where you need some information, we'll do what we can to give that information to, you know, we rely on Stacy to, you know, to keep that confidentiality when you're at those. We're limited as to what.
All right. Perhaps going forward, when we redevelop the next strategic plan, maybe we just want to think about that wording, because as it's worded today, published schedule, etc., meeting dates, minutes, it makes it appear that we should be receiving that information and considering it, whether or not the district's been successful with the planning. So
I think there's like basic, level information that parents probably are unaware of that would really give them some peace of mind, like cameras, alarms, those types of things, without divulging too much, but to open up that communication just enough so that there is a little bit more peace of mind. We can explore what those boundaries are. I'm sure that might help parents feel a little bit better knowing that, confirming that we are prepared for
I agree.
those situations.
Having a sense
We don't know.
a sense of 5 or 6 or however many like specific, even us just hearing that they train in the school during, and that's very reassuring. Or
There's
knowing
more fulfillment out at any given time.
Exactly.
That's just a little piece of information
Yeah.
that really helps parents put that puzzle together to feel a little bit more secure.
doesn't have to be 100% transparent by any means, but some examples of.
I think everybody knows, like I said publicly tonight, that we obviously have cameras in our schools in areas that are permitted by law to have cameras. So we have communication systems that are instantaneous in our schools, so the time it takes to contact the police department is minimal. That's what we do. And I have to say that the response time is phenomenal. I had a situation last year where I pulled into a school and there was a car on the side of the road, and this looked suspicious to me. And, so I drove by it slowly and went up to the school and decided to come back again and look again. Didn't feel right, so I just called 911. And by the time I turned around and hit the top of the road, there was an ambulance and police cruiser there. That's how quick it was. So, and it was nothing serious. A good thing I told somebody needs help. So very good. But we'll do what we can without.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult balance, but I know, speaking as a school committee member, I can say that after having that meeting, I understood in much more depth that there is a preparation plan and there are things in place to ensure the safety of the kids. I think maybe the only gap is the security of the doors can be, like you had mentioned. I mean, I think that maybe something we could improve. Something I want to talk about, but
or not. I was just curious if they had an opinion on that.
Yeah.
Because we only know what we know, and they're receiving state or national training. So I was just curious on that topic.
We did have a security audit done in all our schools. We've gone through that plan and implemented everything that we felt was important. We worked with the police department, decided what would make a difference and what would not make a difference. I do, and I don't know what's happening in all the new schools, but the one I was at today, they did have a double buzzer system.
Did they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe our needs go well.
Very seldom do I see them in school, so.
Yeah, I just think it's probably more the norm these days. Can't be an extra bus, you can't be too safe. We good? Good on this?
We're
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So next up, we have a presentation, social emotional learning strategies and interventions that support building positive school climates. Superintendent and Director of Student Services, Lynn Snow, will give a brief overview of supports and programming tailored towards building and maintaining positive school climates.
I should have decreased the font on the word brief. There are a number of slides there this evening, but Lynn and I are confident that we're going to get through this in sufficient time.
I think it's an important topic, so take what you need.
Sure.
Welcome.
Hi. So yes, we're going to go through social emotional learning and mental health supports update. And so the first thing I really want to do is just kind of set the stage and just really reinforce the who, as far as who supports the social emotional needs of Littleton Public Schools. It really is everybody in this room, everybody in every room in every school is responsible for supporting the social emotional learning of our students and our staff. And so SEL should be infused into all of our interactions with one another as humans, saying hello, making eye contact, asking somebody if they need help, taking somebody's emotional temperature, and sometimes simply just making eye contact and checking in to see if somebody's okay. Those are really important things that we need to be doing and we need to be mindful of. The next thing I really wanted to do was really explain, drill down a little bit the who, so that everybody understands who is the clinical team in Littleton Public Schools and what do they do. So it's important to know first that we do have a physician that is the head of the clinical team. So the past 2 years, it was Dr. Tracy Turner at the high school who led our clinical teams for 2 years and did a phenomenal job. This year and next year is going to be a shared responsibility between Sarah Dorfman, who's at our middle school. She's a licensed social worker and she is the school counselor at Littleton Middle School. And then Teresa Fiore, who is a board certified behavior analyst, and she covers grades 6 through 12 and then shares Russell Street. The head of clinical team responsibilities, there are many of them. So they do conduct monthly meetings. So the entire clinical team does come together on a monthly basis. They do formal and informal needs assessments. They review the district protocols, data collection procedures. They do child study. They will go through cases. They will conference and consult with one another. They do look at our referral intake, discharge, and ongoing monitor and follow-up procedures. They serve together as a member of the LPS Wellness Committee. They coordinate our screenings, organize the implementation, and help to analyze results. They do conduct professional development, provide community outreach, and then they are in regular communication with me. We have ongoing meetings, and we're in frequent communication. But beyond that, at each of the schools, we have a clinical team at each of the buildings. So at Shaker Lane, we have Danya Sklar, who is the school psychologist, Anna Diatko, who is the adjustment counselor. We have Katie Sapp, who spends the majority of her time at Shaker Lane. She's a board certified behavior analyst. And then Mary Philpott. It's really important to understand that the nurses are part of the clinical team at each of the schools, and they do play a really important role. At Russell Street, we have Jacqueline Quesnell. She is a school psychologist. Rachel Layton is our school counselor. Teresa Fiore is a behavior analyst. As I said, she covers part of Russell Street and then the middle school and the high school. And then Kathleen Sullivan is our school nurse at Russell Street. At the middle school, we have Maureen McMahon. She's our school psychologist. Sarah Dorfman is the adjustment counselor. Teresa Fiore covers that school. And then Kathy McCarthy is the lead nurse. We also do continue to have a fifth nurse position, and Cassandra Cayley is new to us this year because Kathy Sullivan has taken over at Russell Street. So Kathy will be covering all of the 4 schools, floating in between, assisting with screenings, assisting with individual student support, some of our students that have high health needs. She'll be rotating through all of the schools and supporting all of the clinics. At Littleton High School, we have Melissa Benson, who is a school psychologist, Tracy Turner, she's our adjustment counselor, Christy and Jennifer He are our school counselors, and then Chris Burrell is the school nurse. And so the next thing I wanted to do before we kind of go into detail and talk about what we're doing at the district level and then at each of the individual schools is just to play a quick clip that explains the what and why of social and emotional learning. This is a video from the Committee for Children.
Think about the young people in your lives and all the different places where they're learning about themselves, how to relate to others, and work together on goals. How can we intentionally create learning experiences that will help all young people develop and maintain positive relationships, become lifelong learners, and contribute to a more caring, just world? Educators, researchers, community members, families, and the students themselves agree. What we need is social and emotional learning, or SEL. SEL is the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that help us to understand ourselves, connect with others, achieve our goals, and support our communities. We all need opportunities to learn and engage in environments where we feel safe, valued, and a sense of belonging. So how does SEL help schools, families, and communities work together so that all young people have these kinds of learning experiences and achieve success in education, careers, and life? CASTLE's framework identifies 5 areas of competence that together help us develop a healthy sense of who we are, manage stress, understand the views of others, and work together to create schools and communities where everyone can grow their strengths and interests. Self-awareness is about how we think about ourselves and who we are. It includes understanding our culture, our thoughts, feelings, and what we believe we're capable of, and understanding how these things can influence our behaviors and beliefs. Self-management is the ability to manage those emotions, thoughts, and actions in different situations so that we can achieve individual and collective goals. This includes coping with stress and anxiety, persevering through challenges, and taking action to create positive change. Social awareness is how we understand others, how we learn to take different perspectives and empathize even with people who are different from us. It also includes understanding how the broader norms and systems around us influence how we develop and create a sense of belonging. Relationship skills are how we connect and engage effectively with others, and how we form lasting friendships and connections. This includes communicating clearly, solving problems together, managing conflict and disagreements, and standing up for ourselves and the rights of others. Lastly, responsible decision-making is how we put it all together to make caring and constructive choices. This includes thinking critically about consequences, analyzing the impact of our actions on ourselves and others, and identifying solutions that support our collective well-being. We continue to develop and practice SEL throughout our lives and can adapt and apply these competencies across different contexts and cultures. How we develop SEL is impacted by our environments, which is why we need to work together across classrooms, schools, families, and communities. In the classroom, students can be explicitly taught SEL skills and also can practice and apply SEL during core subjects, like discussing different perspectives in social studies and language arts, or collaboratively problem solving in science or math. SEL is most effective when supported by evidence-based programs and trusting relationships where students are treated as partners in their learning. Beyond the classroom, SEL can be intentionally promoted throughout the school experience, from the way they're greeted in the morning to how discipline practices are carried out and how adults themselves develop and model positive relationships and the SEL competencies. Outside of school, families and caregivers provide the earliest and ongoing learning and interactions for their children, so it's important that schools listen to and authentically partner with families to help shape SEL priorities and strategies for supporting their children. Similarly, when schools partner with community organizations to align their efforts, SEL opportunities can be strengthened and students benefit even more. With SEL, we can help create schools and learning spaces where all young people feel connected, inspired, engaged, and ready to contribute to the world around them.
Oh, sorry, I got out, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
What we're gonna do next is go through each of we're gonna start by having Dr. Clench talk about some of the priorities and some of things that we're doing at the district level. And then I'm going to highlight what we're doing at the schools as well.
Sorry. Oh, there it is. Perfect. So at the district level, we create professional development, implement strategies, systemic strategies that focus on creating a safe, healthy environment for students and staff. Students should feel safe, secure, and in a sense of belonging. So how do you do that? Having consistency of approach, we endorse the Castle model. Endorsed the Castle model for a number of years. Our teachers are well versed in it. Our PD training involves situations where they role play. So there's not only information dissemination, there's actual carrying out of situational components that would happen in classrooms, etc. So they become proficient at all of those strands. We have a focus, we've always had a focus, which made it more formal: diversity, equity, and inclusion in our district, something important that all districts are focusing on. The more we provide, I'm going to reemphasize a sense of belonging. So being an individual is great, being unique is great, but let's respect the uniqueness and celebrate the diversity. You create an attitude of wanting to do what's best for everybody within a school. Naturally, schools have conflicts. Wherever you go, there's conflict is a natural part of life. How you deal with conflict is how you move forward in a positive way. And when we look at SEL training, it's methodical from pre-K up. But by the time we get to our middle school, that foundation is there. And then we're looking at different ways of dealing with SEL training. And I equate it to, if you're shooting a basketball and nobody's in front of you, it's not that hard to shoot basket. But if you're playing a game of basketball and you have two guards in front of you trying to shoot a basket, it's a whole different skill set. And when I equate that to middle school, especially middle school, all of a sudden their social circles are becoming more complex. Their conflicts are becoming more complex. The anxiety is increased. So they have that foundation of skills, but they need to hone those skills in areas of high anxiety. And they're looking at being accepted. There's social circle rearrangements, etc. At the middle school years, there's a lot of cognitive development going on. So it's a different kind of SEL that we put into the middle school. We use advisory periods as well to emphasize areas that the school more correctly identifies that students need to work on. In order for SEL to be successful, it has to be whatever teacher does in their classrooms. It's actually the basis of good teaching. There's a knowledge component to teaching, and then there's the art of teaching, which really focuses on having students engaged and excited about being in your classroom and being respectful. And training that we do certainly emphasizes all of those qualities. Community connections. We've talked about the importance of connections with our community. The administrators, each principal will be reaching out to their communities this year to have a forum on SEL and student wellness. One that won't be just informational laden or of a roundtable discussion. And what we really want to do as well is start speaking more of the same language in terms of what is a castle model, what are the strategies we're using. I mean, raising your own children isn't easy, as we all know, and to have that opportunity to talk together and identify areas that maybe parents may need help with or have questions, and talk about consistency, something as simple as bedtime. What time of the night should a child in grade 2 go to bed? I mean, everybody has probably some of a commonality there, but there are differences. And at what point in time do you allow your child to have an iPhone or a phone?
According to Jason, never, I think.
Never. Yes. I think it's soft a little bit. At what point in time do you embrace that your child begins to use social media? How do you monitor all of these things? I mean, those are all conversations that need to happen within an environment where people feel safe and get together and talk about it and have educators in the same room as them. And we can talk about what we do at the school level. So we're excited about extending those opportunities to our community. We have a wellness community that's well established. They've worked with the district as well as other departments in our town to bring guest speakers in on topics that are important to not only our school district, but to the community as a whole. We belong to Massachusetts Partnerships for Youth, which is a great organization that provides professional development to staff focused on student wellness. Take advantage of their offerings frequently. Our counseling support, we have a system in place where our clinical team is not assigned to one school. They go where they're needed. So we have all the support that we need at times in certain schools. And there's a crisis that happens. We have the people that come in. We also have access to other school counselors if necessary. Employee assistance program. Sometimes employees in every organization, some of them will struggle. We have a program that the town is bought into as part of our benefits package. So we're able to refer staff to those programs if they need assistance. And we have on here a team approach. Every time I see that, I would rather use the word wraparound approach. If the student is in need, we need to take care of those needs. And it's more than a team approach. It's providing the necessary services that student needs. And it's also, if services are developed or provided more correctly, separate from the school district, it's that communication with the service providers outside the school district, with our service providers that make all the difference in the world in helping particular student outcomes. We have a district curriculum accommodation plan that's academic, social, and emotional learning. Every school has different components to that plan that's specific to that school, which is age appropriate. I've already talked about professional development. We have ecological restructuring, which really means we set up our schools, we set up our classrooms in a way that promotes the development of citizenship and social and emotional learning, seating arrangements, flexible seating, centers, opportunities for collaboration, projects with a group of students completing them. All of those activities are part of learning how to deal with each other. And all of us in this room know when you graduate, go on your next journey, one of the things you're going to be most likely doing is having to work with teams. That's such an important skill to have to work effectively with teams. I already mentioned using a systems approach. Everything needs to be methodical. There needs to be vertical alignment, horizontal alignment. It needs to be age appropriate, and it needs to build on those previous skill sets. And when you get into middle school and high school, it's very different than K to 5 in education in general, especially SEL development. So I'm going to stop there since we have a number of other slides, but I hope it gives you more of an idea of how we operate as a system, just at the school level.
Okay.
And I will kind of piggyback on a couple of things that Dr. Frenchie said. I think he brought up sleep. That's a really important one. Research tells us that 30 to 40% of parents report that their children struggle with sleep and sleep schedules. And we all know that when you're well rested and well fed, you're going to function at your highest level. So it really is kind of intermingled in a partnership too. And then also with the cell phones and the social media, I will give a fund. There is a lot of research on that and when it is appropriate for a student to have a cell phone, and students need cell phones for different reasons at different times. But the most important thing is parents monitoring their child's use of that phone and the social media. So I certainly will plug ourpact.com or pact.com. It is a parental monitoring program that you can use to monitor all of your children's their digital footprint. To go into the high school, there's so many things that each of the schools are doing, so I'm not going to just talk about, I'm going to talk the bulleted list. I think what's nice to do is just to give you a little bit of a cross section, so you understand a little bit of how each of the schools are doing different things that really are promoting the mental health, the well-being, and those 5 core competencies. So one of the things that I want to highlight at the high school, I am going to obviously highlight Archie because he's so wonderful. But simply something like that, having a therapy dog really can change the vibe and the culture. And you see kids smiling and interacting, connecting with one another, stopping in the hallway. So it does just kind of set up, it does conducive to those nice, happy social interactions. The high school does a tremendous amount of counseling. They do individual counseling, group counseling. They do counseling with curriculum. Some of the group topics are anxiety and depression, grief and loss, eating disorders and body image, coping after COVID, managing self-injurious behaviors, and coping with trauma. So that's really one of the things that I wanted to highlight at the high school. But then going on to the middle school, what I really wanted to highlight there is they have an advisory program, which is really neat. There's monthly themes and topics, and it's individually designed, and Matt Levangie actually plans out the activities and lessons. So each month has a different theme. September is making connections and team building and acceptance, caring, and empathy. October is responsibility and setting goals. November is bullying, kindness, being an upstander, and appreciation and gratitude. December is generosity and ownership and growth mindset. January is effort, persistence, and grit, and goal setting continued. February is respect and healthy relationships and respect for the rights of others. March is tolerance and community. April is creativity and initiative and giving back. May is honesty and integrity, and June is pride and self-advocacy. Looking at Russell Street. One of the things that was really important that we were able to do was the hiring of a 4th school psychologist. That allows us to have a really comprehensive and 3-tiered approach for addressing social emotional needs. It allows for a more preventative model in which the school counselor will generally be working with our tier 1 and tier 2 students, catching issues early on, allowing for students to be supported for success. The model also allows for the school psychologist the opportunity to work with tier 3 students, providing specially designed instruction who have counseling goals on their IEPs. This shift is going to impact positively on academic performance and overall school-wide culture. The school has a school-wide positive behavior plan with stripes, who's highlighted in the picture there. The teachers have a morning meeting model that's modeled after responsive classroom practices. It builds relationships with students and fosters a positive, safe space for learning. One other thing that is really wonderful that has been instituted this year is Table Talk Tuesdays, where Andrea and Cheryl will sit down with a group of students to really hear their voice and talk about, issues, and just it's like a really nice open forum. And I happened to land on one of them, and it really is like a nice little cabinet that the principals are having with the students. So it was a really cool thing to see. And so I'm going to have you move on to the next slide. Go on and talk about Shaker Lane. So Shaker Lane School is using the social thinking curriculum, under which zones of regulation falls. So each grade and class gets 6 lessons at the start of the year as a way to help them have a collective culture of norms, expectations, and wellness. These lessons are shared with families, and they're attending the workshop during Connections Night so that they can have a shared language between school and home. I also want to mention, I forgot to mention, that at Russell Street, Rachel's going to be providing a second step evening presentation on October 25th for parents. She'll be sending out more information about that as well. And so I was talking a little bit about social thinking, and this is just a quick clip that talks to, that shows us about social cognitive theory, which is just theory of social thinking.
Miss Pai is a grade 3 teacher. She wants to teach her students how to appropriately have a conversation. Most of her students cannot understand the concept of how to do it.
I would really like some help on how I should teach my students to have a proper conversation.
Why don't you use the social cognitive theory?
What's that?
The social cognitive theory states that we learn behaviors through observation, modeling, and motivation.
Pardon me?
Often children do not understand that a conversation is like a two-way street. They need to learn that you must be patient and listen to others every now and then. As the teacher, you can show your students this by telling them that there is no talking aloud when the teacher is talking, or that you must raise your hand when you have a question. Instruction should be organized and presented in a manner that is understandable and meaningful to the learner. Students can learn from their teachers and peers that symbols mean certain things. For example, thumbs up can mean good job, and holding 2 fingers in the air can mean quiet. Now let's see if we can use the main principles of the social cognitive theory to help solve Miss Pai's problem. First, Miss Pai will need to understand what skills her students will need in order to have a proper conversation. After thinking, Miss Pai understood that her students should listen, make eye contact, and ask more questions. Through classroom interactions with the teacher and other peers, your students will learn all these steps first, prior to build better knowledge on how to have a conversation. After implementing these principles of the social cognitive theory, Miss Pai's students are doing a much better job of staying on topic, making appropriate comments during the conversation, and understanding how to initiate, maintain, and end a conversation.
Wow, using the social cognitive theory really helped me to teach my students how to have a proper conversation.
So some of the curriculums that we're using is for second step, and the problem solving steps are to state a problem, think of solutions, explore consequences, and pick the best solution. And so it's a universal classroom-based social emotional learning curriculum that covers kindergarten through grade 5, and it nurtures children's social emotional competence through foundational learning skills and evidence-based second step lessons, and it helps to create a safer, more positive school community. And just to go back, social thinking really does take us through looking at social attention, social interpretation, problem solving, and social responses. And it really pairs well with the zones of regulation, which is another program that we use that is coordinates with the social thinking curriculum. And the zones of regulation framework and curriculum, it teaches students scaffolded skills toward developing a metacognitive pathway to build awareness of their feelings and internal states. And it utilizes a variety of tools and strategies for regulation, pro-social skills, self-care, and overall wellness. And just to give you a little snapshot, what it really does is it wants to kind of apply like a color coding to different feelings and emotions, but then apply strategies and things that kids can do when they're in that zone.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So our pre-K or K through 5 students are doing the second step, but they're also, this is a way you're on the side of it, on
Yes.
top of it, okay, reinforce it.
Yep, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. That's consistent across both those schools.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Dr. Clenchey's going to talk about just next steps and some things that we have in the plans to go forward into this year in the fall.
So we've already talked about community connections with our principals reaching out to their school communities this year to focus on NCL. We have a connections evening planned that's in my update, superintendent's update, so I'll talk about that later on. But that gives us an opportunity to work with parents and have a roundtable discussion about various topics that we've identified or heard from parents that are important to them. So really excited that we're continuing with that approach. High school bridge program. We do have students that are away for medical reasons, etc. And one of the key things that school systems have to do is when those students come back, they need the support to integrate back into school and not feel stressed. I mean, they're already stressed because they've missed time. If they feel that they can't get caught up, then that stress increases dramatically. And before we know it, they're struggling, and at times they don't even want to come to school. So we've done it. Excuse me, a pretty good job of that, but we can do better. And sometimes it involves partial programming for a certain part of the year until that they can reestablish a full course. But school systems throughout the state and beyond are finding there's a greater need for that during the pandemic. Can't say post-pandemic yet. The last three interlink. We have done surveys. We've used various companies. Panorama is one company. We've had local surveys. We hired a consultant to do an MTSS needs assessment in our district. That's multi-tiered systems of support. So that would be academic tiered system of support, social and emotional learning tiered systems of support. That will involve surveying students, staff, and parents as well. The administration doesn't know this yet, so I don't have a meeting with them until next Tuesday, but what I would like to see happen again is middle school, high school, focus on meeting with students and having roundtable discussions based on guided conversations with the students to identify topics of interest, rather than just deciding on what topics are going to be discussed. And at the elementary level, we have morning meetings. Those are very structured to work on social and emotional learning. Time for teachers to continue to work together to identify areas that their students may be struggling with. Could be academic, could be social and emotional learning, but having that time and opportunity to develop strategies together is very powerful, and it helps move students along the continuum of all of those three areas rather quickly. So MTSS is interventions in the classroom prior to a student being tested for an IEP. So we're really emphasizing that more in our district. We have been for years, but this needs assessment is going to give us a reading of where we're at this point in time and where we need to go. We don't over-identify students in this district, but at the same time, I think as administration, we feel that if we continue to move forward with tiered systems of support within our classroom environment, it will have a positive effect of less students being identified on IEPs, because they're going to get those skills right at the beginning prior to it being a concern or fall behind to a certain point.
Can you explain what you meant with what you mean by over-identify?
Well,
in that case,
there are some districts that struggle with the reality that as soon as a student is struggling, they're referred to be tested for special education services. And there's so much that can be done before that happens. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset change that needs to occur. We've worked on that in our district for years, and we've made some significant strides. But we need to hit that next level. And that's why we were brought in a consultant to help us get to that next level. And it's going to make I believe, a huge difference. I mean, we're already doing a lot, but there's a lot of untapped potential with offering tiered systems of support in any district, including ours.
So sometimes districts will have significant disproportionality, which means that, based on the data collected across the state, there are too many children being identified, and statistically significantly. So, multiple standard deviations. So like Dr. Punchy said, Littleton is not in that category, but sometimes school districts will get into that category because the tier 2 supports are not as strong as they can be. So then you will qualify a child because they might have an educational qualification. If they have attentional difficulties, they may not have a medical diagnosis, but schools are able to look at their performance and the discrepancy between their achievement and their cognitive profile. So it's important to know that we just want to be able to do everything that we can to make sure that all of our tiers are as strong as they can be.
And the last thing I was going to say, and I stopped, I didn't finish, when we meet with the administrators on Tuesday, we're going to talk about the potential of administering a climate survey 2 times this year. Last year, we realized quite quickly that it was nice to have everybody back at school, and I've talked about this before, but we had some students that really struggled being part of the classroom. And as a result, there was, for lack of a better word, a crackdown by staff to help students get back into the swing of things. So that affects climate. Climate changes daily, changes weekly. And because of what we've been through with the pandemic, I would really like to see, or we would really like to see a couple of surveys this year, just to see how we're doing, see what our progress is like. I don't believe in using surveys too much, but I think this is a good year to do that, just to see how our strategies are working. And again, you can give a climate survey 1 week and 2 weeks later give the same survey, and the results could be very different depending on what's happening in that particular school at that point in time. Culture is what we strive to achieve, which is long lasting, and you first of all have to have a solid or consistent climate to affect the culture, which lasts a long time in the school setting. I hope that was helpful.
And just
I
to
think
close,
so.
I
Yep.
just want to remind everybody or let everybody know that Monday was World Mental Health Day. And so nearly 1 in 5 children in the United States will experience mental health illness in their lifetime. And so it is honored annually on October 10th. It was created to raise awareness of mental health issues and mobilize support to improve the overall mental health of people around the world. And so you can honor Mental Health Day, and you can honor it every day by making sure that you're checking out the front. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Austin?
I do. First of all, I really appreciate that and appreciate all the work. I think we've heard from this committee that this is something we all emphasize, and just want to note there's a couple of ways I appreciated how we've been proactive. The high school and the middle school, especially with adding the advisories and focusing on that. And the bridge program, which seems to be meeting an increasing need we have. How's that going?
We're looking to staff it. So we have-
That's okay. That's
We're not where we want to be yet.
So right now, we're doing what we're doing last year, which is using our clinical staff to create very individualized programs for students that are transitioning in and out of hospitalizations or are needing that extra support. But really being able to have a coordinated effort and have a program for those students is so important. That being said, it's very important to have the right person coordinating that position. And so we are still looking to fill that position.
That's what I was wondering about, because it seemed to be a district initiative last year, something we really want to have, and it seems like we need to have. But as I'm looking, it's very, very helpful kind of list of clinical team members. I'm not seeing a bridge coordinator or anything like that. So, all right, more actively searching for that person.
Yes.
Great. The last thing I would say is that I really like what I'm hearing about having teachers talk to each other and kind of vertical alignment and things like that, talking about what the students are experiencing. I assume that's a focus for the PD, or just on PD days, giving folks just time to, is that part of staff meetings? Is that something extra?
Oh, the monthly meetings at the.
Or just like if, the 5th grade team's saying, oh, Brad's having, are you seeing what I'm seeing with Brad, that kind of thing?
There's a lot. So the grade levels will have, their common plan time where they're talking about students and consulting. Students on IEPs have consultation built into their IEP in the 8th grade. So they're talking specifically about that, that child during those times. But then each of the schools also has a student study team, an FST team, where teachers can bring a student for review for either academic concerns, behavior concerns, social concerns, any type of concern, even if it's fine motor, a student is having, trouble with, fine motor issues, and the teachers are looking for strategies. And so you have that discussion, and then collect data, look at the strategies are working, and then come back together and determine if the student needs to be referred for an evaluation.
Great. So the common planning time, I know the middle school model often has the teachers all talking about, there's the students they share, but the common planning times, that's what I wanted to do. Thank you. It's okay.
Is he good? Great.
Well,
And-
I do have
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I mean, it sounds like everything's going great. It sounds like you guys have a great plan, and I'd love to see all the different programs you have for the kids, services that you have for the kids. It seems like you guys are really focused on it. I'd really love to see that. So I guess the big question that I have for you guys, which Kelly, you had hit a little bit about kind of doing the MTSS and the clinical or the climate surveys. My question for you guys is how are we measuring the success of that from throughout the year now? So, you know, we have a lot of data in regards to the kids' curriculum and how they're doing with academics, but there doesn't seem to be too much data in regards to this social emotional behavior at the school. And I just feel like that's something that I want to like sink my teeth into a little bit more to know where we're at now. Yep. To know if what we're doing is, you know, progressive with kids.
So some of the screening tools that we use do help give us that data. That count all of the counselors that provide counseling, they have counseling goals, and they have a protocol to continue or discharge or determine whether or not they need to continue to see a student. But I want to be very clear. It's very easy for me to tell you all of the organizational structure of everything that we do and all of the supports. That doesn't mean students aren't struggling. That doesn't mean that there are not challenges, and that doesn't mean that there are a lot of needs that are being addressed on a daily and weekly and hourly basis in each of the schools.
Right. So how are we measuring how those, I mean, there's the big picture of what you guys are working on the back end for social emotional health, but then you have the day-to-day fires that you have to put out all the time. So how are you guys measuring if you have enough bandwidth with the staff that you have, or if you need more, or if kids are slipping through the cracks? And how are we measuring the success of all of these things combined?
There are a couple of ways. There are grade level, local level, anecdotal notes that are taken. If, for example, a grade 2 grade decides to work on a particular SEL skill, they will have some intensive intervention in terms of teaching the skill, and then do those behaviors subside or not. And in most cases they do, but it takes longer for some students to learn some of those skills than others, and then we focus on those students as well. Referrals to the office is another anecdotal measure of what we're doing in the classroom in terms of SEL and behavior. It's not super easy to track, but we all track our referrals, and we also send in our discipline data to the state every year. It has to be recorded, sent into the state. So there are checks and balances. It's not all qualitative; it's quantitative. I mean, and you can work on an SEL skill for 2 weeks and everything's going well, and all of a sudden, 2 months later, you identify as a skill that needs further attention again. So it's not one and done. There's so many variables or factors that come into play. But we do have some students that really struggle with social and emotional skill development. We work with those students. Sometimes if they're identified and qualified for an IEP, and that would be part of the IEP, and they would have additional services as well, which is all documented in the IEP. So you have the regular education component and those students that are identified as need to be on an IEP, we have that information as well.
And at the building level, all of the principals are looking for, as Dr. Plenty said, patterns. They're looking for temporal patterns. They're looking for activity patterns. If we're seeing multiple challenges on recess, we need to come together and have a collaborative meeting to discuss. If we're having a lot of teachers that are having issues at arrival and dismissal, transition times, what are we going to put in as interventions? If there's more difficulties during the lunch, like at the middle school, they put in a whole different kind of flow and protocol to the way kids enter and get into the lunch line, because that was identified through looking at the issues that were coming up during lunchtime, to change the whole kind of organizational flow of that space. And that has really served to improve the lunch. That doesn't mean that there's not still issues during middle school lunches. There's issues during middle school lunches
all over the land. But really coming together and having collaborative discussions with the administration, with the teachers, and there's many mechanisms for that, because I think the teachers are very comfortable with communicating with their principals and giving feedback and identifying, you know, where the problem areas are and what do we need to do. And I think that being responsive to that is the best way that we can address those issues. Because even looking at being able to add that fourth psychologist, we're going to be able to kind of reap the benefits of that throughout this year. But in addition to that layer, we also have specialized behavior support teaching assistant staff at each of the schools. And so there was one at Russell Street last year. We identified that there were more students that needed behavior support throughout the day and throughout the week. And so now we have 2 therapeutic support needs. So I mean, it's a constant cycle of conversation and discussion.
Right, yeah, and I understand it's very fluid, as you said, things are
Really is.
constantly changing. And it's not like I said, it sounds like you guys have everything. You're doing everything you can to kind of help the students develop the social emotional skills. And I'm just wondering if is there any way for the school committee to be presented with some data, some of the patterns that you guys may see, so that we can get an understanding?
Absolutely, I think that's what Dr. Clenchey was saying is being able to take you know, more survey data, look at our screening tools. And the clinical team, when I started the presentation, I talked about them looking at the screenings across the district and using that data. So absolutely, that's, you know, what we're doing. And the high school does a really nice job looking at you know, universal screening tools and continuing to do that and looking at the data to see if we can find and identify patterns of needs. They use that data to determine the topics that they're going to be that they do group counseling for.
Right. Yeah, we bring responsibility to that for us.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. If there are SEL challenges in a school, the administration will know very, very quickly, because it creates a disbalance in terms of all the roles that they have to carry out every day. So it's not something that gradually percolates. It doesn't take long when the administration is spending too much time dealing with social and emotional challenges, and you know, that obviously creates a incentive to make sure that we do everything we can to help teach those students the skills that they need to be productive members of the classroom in the school.
And you guys don't feel like you've reached that?
No,
still?
no.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have days
Yeah.
like that where, I mean, one of the many things that's exciting about administration is you can plan all you want for your work, but you never know what you're going to be doing every day, because it changes.
Fair point. A couple quick questions. One, last year we introduced Care Solace. Are people still using it?
People are still using it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We had a conversation about that just last week, that there are still families that are unreachable, and there's still families that we need to continue to work with to try to bring the support or you know, encourage them to be responsive. But there have been a number of families that have given us feedback to say that this has changed their life.
Good.
And that this has opened up the ability for them to access counseling for their child, and they had been previously trying for 1 year, 2 years to try to find a counselor that matched.
And a challenge, you know, we want to talk about challenges. We need help in terms of service providers that go beyond the school level to handle challenges that we're not equipped to. And we're not alone. But if I was to identify the biggest area of concern in terms of supporting children in schools right now, would be the lack of professional support outside of the school environment.
Thankfully,
Such a shortage.
on a positive note, at the state level, the Division of Professional Licensure is looking at expanding the licensure to a junior level counselor license. So being able to expand the support, somebody working under, like I'm a behavior analyst, an associate behavior analyst can work under me, but having the same type of mechanism for a clinical psychologist and psychologist to have a practitioner be able to work under them, that's licensed and it is covered by the Division of Professional Licensure, but that's going to help, but it's not going to help the immediate. The mental health system is still broken, you know. Which
leads to my second question. I saw in a bullet point, and don't want a full report on it, but you know, we began this meeting really talking about school safety and student safety.
They're so injured.
Well, that's part of it, but also like suicide prevention and dealing with anxiety, with the lack of clinical support out there. I'm glad it's on our list. I hope it remains a focus. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Continuing to do the signs of suicide, which is a program that we have been doing and will continue to do to identify students and provide them with support.
Thank you.
Good. Keep up the good work. On Jason's slide, I note that he's got a dog that's giving him a kiss. Is that like a plea for, would you like your own therapy dog at the middle school? Is that what that's all about?
I will tell you.
Very jealous.
What's cost effective therapy?
Yeah. Yeah.
High school's getting the second therapy dog.
Yes, they are.
We should have led with that.
Oh,
Wow.
soon to be 3, I hear.
When you stand out to the bus, you can make all kinds of new friends.
That's great. Thanks very much. So I'll note that we're approaching what,
8:30.
8:30. The hope is to try to get out of here by 9. I think if we keep a tight agenda between now and then, we can be somewhat close. Next up, we'll hear from the superintendent. Quick update on enrollment, upcoming vaccination clinics, and the Fall Connections program.
I included the October first enrollment in your package. I mean, good news. We always have students moving in and out. I don't consider our district to be a transient district, but people have things that come into their lives, and it affects where they live and sometimes relocate. We're down 4 students since September 12th, so we're at 1,692 students rather than 1,696 students, which is fine. In that 2 weeks, we may be back up where we were. So I'm certainly happy with the enrollment that we have this year. Vaccination clinics, Williston High School, we really like that site. It's very conducive for people to park quickly, come in for their vaccination and leave. So we're happy to house the clinics there. 4 clinics are coming up from 5 to 7. We find there's more need, we'll increase the hours of the clinic. So yeah, 4 more clinics. We've already done 3, I believe, 7 clinics in the fall. So it's pretty good for a school district to, jump into the water that much. So very pleased.
Sorry, that's
Go ahead.
the bivalent one?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
also flu or not flu?
The alpha flu.
Right.
If you want to get 2 shots, you're
Right.
welcome to get 2 shots there. I
Thank
had my bivalent 2 weeks ago, and so I have those antibodies now for a while.
There was some talk at some point of the Board of Health sort of taking this over. Maybe we would offer the facility,
Right.
but they would be in charge of I mean, have we executed on that, or is this still
No.
purely run by the administration?
Yeah, it's run by school district.
Okay.
So I don't think they've hired any staff yet, to my knowledge. We just looked at it. We've been doing it for a year and a half. We have a system down. We have a community support mechanism with the disaster group in town that helps run the clinic in terms of moving people through, et cetera, and being there in case there's an emergency. So we're in good shape.
Okay. Well, it's a great service to the town. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. I'm glad we can do it. Third thing that I mentioned already, district connections evening for families, October 26th, 5:30 to 7:45 p.m. Mrs. Steele and myself sent out a brochure on Friday. So I encourage you to take a look at it and sign up if possible. That just helps us identify how much space we need for each session. We want you to be comfortable when you're there and not be having an overcrowded population in the room. I'd like to thank Park and Rec Department. They're once again offering free babysitting. So we really appreciate your support. End of my report.
You have to go to Connections to get the free baby.
Yes,
Right? Okay.
yes.
Just double check.
So just stay in the building.
No dropping off.
Yeah. That's a joke. All right. So next up is the conclusion of our presentations, a review of strategic plans. I believe Principal Everhart's going to go first, followed by Principal Harrington. The review of the district strategic plan, standard 1 curriculum, instruction, assessment. Schools to discuss school improvement plans specific to the goals of the 22-23 school year, discuss major accomplishment challenges, suggested revisions or goals that should be taken into consideration as a review. Standard 1 is part of the process for creating an updated strategic plan 2023 through 2028. Right. Take it away.
Okay.
So first slide, this will be a masterclass in efficiency.
Great.
First, you can see the goals from the previous one. I know you guys saw those last time, so we can move on. All right. Next slide, please. So in terms of the accomplishments working under that, these are just some of the highlights. There are plenty, but these are some of the highlights. During that time, the ELA department met and tried to really spiral their curriculum to focus on skills, text, those kinds of things, so that as the kids went from 6 to 7 to 8, there was continuity in terms of what they wanted to build on. Math department adopted a new curriculum. Unfortunately, the science department wasn't able to complete their curriculum review because of COVID. And so we hope to begin real soon. And within that, we also started to look at a different focus in terms of how we assess students. Instead of just using MCAS as a prime indicator, bringing in math. And the real part of this is about adding tier 2 supports to what we have for students. So for students who are not on an IEP, having opportunities for math lab, lit lab, academic support center, other things, to be able to target students before they get recommended for special ed services. We would definitely want to make sure that we provide every opportunity before we get to that point. And then just really looking at, effective teaching strategies and what we want students to be able to do. And so moving towards projects and demonstrations of knowledge. So that's what we saw over the last few years. Next slide, please. So the challenges, looking at the other schools, I think the one thing that's consistent is time. Right, and we're certainly not asking for more time. It's just really about making sure that we take the time that we have and be extremely efficient with it and finding the time within that day. So one of the things that I tend to focus on is really offering opportunities for our department teachers to work together. There are monthly department meetings, but when middle school teachers, high school teachers are working together, it's not always easy to be middle school specific. And so trying to find time within our meeting schedules so that teams can work together, because when you only have one 8th grade teacher and one 6th grade teacher in a subject, you don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of. I think it's just real important at the middle school level, given the range of learners that we have, that we provide time for teachers to do that.
So Jason, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You're talking teams, you're talking by curriculum teams?
By curriculum teams.
But also grade level teams at different times?
Well, grade level teams meet every week.
Okay, so you're setting people together in the building.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. And then really looking at, our middle school specific teaching strategies. There's so much information out there, but a lot of it's directed at elementary and high school. There's not a lot of middle school instructional practices, there's not a lot of research and things on that. So really looking at what's out there and what can drive our work. And then really, again, looking at our tier 2 supports. And one of the things that we're getting ready to start is, rather than just sending a kid into a math lab or a lit lab, really figuring out how do we make sure that while the student is there, instead of getting a general support, that we're targeting those students' specific needs while offering that at the same time. So rather than sending a kid who's struggling in math, we put them in there for review, and that might be great, but there might be specific parts of the curriculum or specific concepts that they struggle with. And so how can we target that even more effectively? So that's something that we're working on this year that we'll be able to do. All right, next slide. So really, this is going to be the driving force, these 3 goals, and obviously we'll write them the way, we need to wordsmith them, but I think there's 3 real important things we want to look at. We're doing a lot of work on universal design and culturally responsive instruction. And when you really look at them, they really do tie in nicely together. And so what we want to do is kind of weave them together as a string, right? Where they are part of something together. They are on their own distinct thing, but yet they are a part of something that we want to do. It'll serve several purposes. One, to make sure that we are involving the best practices in terms of our instruction. But 2, that we're really trying to cast a wide net in terms of servicing students who come to us from all kinds of backgrounds. One of the things that we're really working on too is building thinking classrooms, right? It's a great thing in math that's sort of sweeping the nation, and I think it can be extended into other content areas as well. So it's inquiry-based, it's high levels of engagement and demonstration of knowledge, rather than just giving a student the information. Here's how you do it. Now practice for an hour, really making the students figure out how to solve it. They'll be more connected to it. They'll be more invested in it, and they'll have a better sense of that fluency with it because they've had to figure it out rather than just having it presented to them, memorize it, and then move on. And then finally, the last part is something that our leadership team talked about in a meeting recently about digital citizenship. And we do this a lot with internet safety and making sure you don't give out usernames, passwords, addresses, but we're thinking more along the lines of there's so much misinformation out there. How do students, if they're doing research, how can they figure out what is accurate, what's real? You know, and different than it was 10 years ago. You know, 10 years ago, we would tell students, you know, stay away from Wikipedia, right? Anybody can add to it. It's such a different landscape now. And so we need to help our students understand what's real, what can be trusted, and what might be misinformation. And if you're not sure, how can you find out? And so we really think that that's where we want to go at the middle school level, so that when we're sending students to high school, they're competent in figuring out, you know, what is true, what is not, when they're going to get something online. That's it.
Terrific.
Great.
Questions, comments, feedback from the committee?
None?
No, I've got some. Yeah, I've got some. No,
You sorry, you cannot get away without.
This is what I'm interested in all, but I'm very interested in this stuff. So I love the focus on inquiry-based classrooms and making that, you know, with the process you're talking about. My experience is the assessments have to match that for the students to think that what they're doing is meaningful. If we're doing all this, you know, inquiry stuff over here, but the assessments are all multiple choice tests,
Right.
then they figure out the multiple choices, how they're being graded, how they're being assessed.
Right.
We're focusing on that part too?
Yeah, what you really put this under the umbrella of, and it actually touches on all of these goals, is the idea that if it's done right, if it's handled properly, that the assessment comes within what they're doing to the point where it's not just checking a series of boxes.
Yeah.
We see that with when we talk about culturally responsive instruction. People say, well, yeah, we study this Black author, we deal with this Black scientist, and therefore we are covering that end. And that's not really what we're talking about. We're not just saying we're going to check boxes, and therefore we're woke.
Mm-hmm.
What we're really saying is, how do you weave it in so it just becomes a part of what you're doing? And assessments are a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
If we do all of these kinds of activities, these thinking activities, and we give them a traditional test, well, then what's the point?
Yeah. And so that's where I think, if I'm understanding correctly, that's where the UDL approach with, you know, demonstrate it this way, this way, this way, this way. As long as the assessments match those different kinds of kind of learning styles, then I think we're on the right track.
And that's where the real focus on our training is going to be at the middle school level. Is I think our teachers will be more than adept at being able to handle that part of it in construction. But how do you bring it full circle, and how do you develop an assessment that reflects that same knowledge? And so the information's out there. It's just now finding a way to train our staff on that.
In my experience in working with teachers and training, that's the tough part.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the other thing about the digital citizenship part, I know I guess I'm interested, is that mainly in social studies? Because I know the new framework has a whole section on kind of analyzing digital sources and digital citizenship, or is it across the curriculum? Okay.
I mean, I think in years past, you know, social studies was the place for that, because that's where you did your
research. Yeah.
But I think anymore, you know, the idea of the culturally responsive instruction in the UDL would mean that these other content areas certainly are open to that. I hear all the time people say, well, science and math, he doesn't really lend itself to that. I disagree. I think there's plenty of misinformation around science.
Well, especially if you're sending them out to
the,
the, watch this video,
Yeah.
spend some time to explain why this is a credible source and why this isn't.
Exactly. And our, you know, what we know about the world around us has changed so much in the last 5 to 10 years. So I would say that it has to move beyond social studies, because I think, Brad, the real important part of this, and this is why it's such a critical part of middle school, it is the transfer of knowledge from one subject to the next that makes or breaks a student's success. If they go to ELA class and they work on certain parts of writing and they don't do that in other classes, then what's the point, right? It's the transfer of, so that the kids see the value that, wow, I'm doing this in this class, and I'm doing it in this class. But then it just becomes part of practice and not something that they're just having to do with one class. So what we're trying to do is break the barriers of saying, well, this is an ELA thing, or this is a history thing, or a math thing, and saying it's all kind of one big thing. And you're going to be doing the same things in all those classes.
So inquiry isn't just in a science lab, it's also in the ELA.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Yeah, great. It's a good goal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Jason, just two things jumped off the slides, which I appreciated hearing, and I just wanted to give you some feedback. So the focus greater attention on the MAP scores. I mean, so often we hear around any sort of standardized testing, well, it's a standardized test, so you got to be careful. And, you know, a student's more than just a test score. But I actually appreciate, you know, the attention in the test scores and then doing something with them. So I I love seeing that.
One of my-
It's different than what we always hear, which is, well, it's just a test score, so we can't put a lot of effort, you know.
Map is great because it gives you real-time data. but
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest struggles, I'll speak for myself as a teacher who taught for 17 years, it's so frustrating. When people say, well, you use the data to inform your instruction, but we would never talk about how that would happen.
Sure.
They would just say, here's the data, now do something with it. And frustrated me as a teacher, and it's something that I want to eliminate in our building as an administrator, right? Bringing it back full circle. The map data should be a guiding force, but we should be able to do something with it, not just say, well, think about that when you're grading against it. It has to be more, it has to be richer.
Right.
In what we do and how.
I like that. And then, supporting educators with consistent professional development that targets the middle school. It's like you are the middle child, right? There's like a lot of attention on the first child, the oldest student, and then,
Right.
so, you know, it was interesting to hear that you feel like, you know, perhaps there isn't a lot of professional development that specifically geared towards the middle school. And I'm just wondering if, I know this is going to be received the wrong way, but I'm just wondering if we could potentially try to do a better job finding the specific material for that.
Right.
Or perhaps if it's just not there, you know, the middle, like maybe those students need to be in class more, and maybe the middle school doesn't need as much professional development because it's, you know, some things are, we can apply half of it because it's really high school level stuff, and we can only apply the other half because we're learning elementary school stuff. I don't know, just food for thought.
One
But
of the things that I've been a part
kind
of.
of appreciated the honesty with
Yeah.
that.
One of the things I've been a part of for a few years, there's an administrator study group that I'm a part of, principals from everybody from Waltham to Brookline to Billerica and all around. So it's a great opportunity. We meet once a month, and so it's a great chance for me to learn from other administrators because another school might have figured something out. Like for example, we sent home a flyer of handle with care to send to families, just saying, listen, just let us know if your child is having a rough night or a rough morning. I didn't pick that up. Right? These are things that I pick up from other schools and other things. And so we certainly will do that. But that's part of my job is to find that. But I think the important part of me putting it in there was that anybody who's taught more than 5 to 10 years knows that it's a cycle. Everything comes around. It gets repackaged, repurposed. How many times can you have a Grant Wiggins, book revised and edited and then put out as the new thing? So what I'm going to do is say, we're getting rid of the yearly cycle. This is just going to be what we do. We're going to be really, really good at it.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very efficient, as promised. All right. Dr. Harrington?
All of the goals that I listed here, I broke down a little bit, have some departmental specificity at the high school, but all the goals that Jason had mentioned are the same at the high school too, in terms of they're very generalized, and I think they speak across the district. But certainly I can say 6 to 12, the 4 goals that he mentioned are also being enacted at the high school. But just to give some specificity tonight, and I'll be brief too and move along to pace and not read every item for you since you have it with packet. You can see it on the screen. But one of the things I wanted to mention at the top is I've begun a review program of studies, little project, myself, and a couple other staff members, and I've commenced a comparative analysis of high school graduation requirements. I think it's time to do this. It's been a while since we've really looked at similarities and differences of schools that are comparable to us and schools that are maybe a little higher achieving or rated that way, and see what we can learn from them. Other principals are doing this too. I reached out to them. So we're creating this little chart, and it should be informative for us. Maybe we'll have some suggestions to the school committee. Certainly we'll start internally with our school leadership team and our school council, and then we'll broaden with the superintendent and the admin council of things we might want to do differently, if anything. What I have discovered just initially, of course, there are significant differences in how they award credit, or what some of the specific requirements are, what they don't require, we do. So I think we can learn from that. It's been a while. I've been principal for a while, so it's time to do this. And I think you could see something in our school improvement plan as a result of it. Just to go real quick, the Science and Fine and Performing Arts departments have commenced in the first stage of the curriculum review process. I know that Steele has already reviewed the curriculum review process with you. We want that is underway. The mathematics department is focused on identifying and addressing any skills gaps from the past 2 years. I would say that I would speak that is really a goal within each department, given what we've all been through over the last couple of years. But I asked the curriculum coordinators to share some of these things and appreciate their feedback of, hey, what's one thing that you really focused on this year? They gave me a couple of more than one, but I took what they said and tried to encapsulate it in this slide here. World languages, blind curriculum units, the new state frameworks, history and social science department providing genocide education. I want to thank Mrs. Harvey for organizing once again a Holocaust survivor who's going to present to the entire school in November. And I appreciate the funding from PTA or LEF. We just got funding from LEF to help with that. She's getting on years the Holocaust survivor. She's I believe 87. So this is an opportunity for all of our students to hear from this wise elder about the experience she went through. So that will be a special flex block in November. ELA is focused on developing reading identities, writing fluency, and self-efficacy. Very important. Leading that can do the work, though it's challenging at times. We do have a rigorous curriculum. One of the things I say to tell all the parents when we have assemblies or back to school nights is that your children will be challenged here, they'll be known, loved, cared for, and supported. But we do have high standards and expectations for not only their academics, but also the conduct and character. All departments are focused on implementing UBL practices and emphasizing lesson relevance. Go to the next slide. About accomplishments. Oh, and there were a whole host of accomplishments that you saw presented by all the principals in May. So I highlighted just a few. New financial algebra class. We have a new stipend position for a financial literacy coordinator. I'm excited about potentially we will be bringing this year, after some delay, a reality fair or credit for life fair in the spring to the high school. We're learning from another district that had a lot of success with doing this prior to COVID. So I appreciate the staff who have engaged in this process already. The history and social science has implemented a revised curriculum framework. We are offering more electives in fine and performing arts, including intro to theater, acting for non-actors, and acting for the stage. So that's kind of exciting. I think there's even a Shakespearean acting one for the second semester. That's all. It's a credit to Mr. Nikos, who's our theater director, drama director. Offering more electives. That new PACE program at the high school, special education, really small right now, but the stage is being set. Everything's being groundwork. Everything's being, I guess I would say the foundation being laid this year, so that next year we'll be ready for those middle schoolers coming up when the program is larger, potentially bringing in some other students who might emerge with needs for that program. Again, next slide, accomplishments that were mentioned in May. Just mentioned briefly, mentioned probably by every principal already, funding professional development opportunities related to UBL provided over the school year. We continued our seal of biliteracy, having a special assembly for the students who are participating in that program in November as well. And again, the civics emphasis and projects with U.S. history too have been highlighted prior in previous presentations. Challenges. Well, you've heard this before, but it's certainly pronounced throughout the country, addressing and remedying student attendance concerns for the past 2 years. Student attendance is much improved. We still have some students who have social anxiety about coming to school. It's become on pretty much one hand at the high school at this point. They're getting intensive support and communication from our clinical team, which I appreciate. But for some of our kids, they're still really struggling. They can read about the newspaper, and it's right here in Littleton too. So working with that, and just getting kids back to good habits related to being on time and being in school more regularly. But adopting or adapting instructional practice in response to the disruptive learning experience of students during the past few years, that's across the whole school and across the whole district, across the country. Supporting social and emotional academic needs. I don't think I need to say much about that. I've already got a comprehensive presentation to that. And I'll just mention that creating and implementing a new bridge program is underway. I actually interviewed someone today, potentially who would be interested in it, maybe not right way to start, but might be a few months down, but a high potential for us to start staff that program and walk around the school with the potential with the candidate, and we'll see what happens with that. But I'm excited about the possibilities there if the candidate is interested in moving forward. revisions and goals to consider. I heard mentioned develop the bridge program is at the top of the list, there, or one of the top items. Reviewing and aligning assessment and grading with best practices. Jason and has already talked about a little bit about what he's doing at the middle school. We're trying to look at best practice. There's some variability across teachers, a fair amount of autonomy in high school faculty, which is good. You know, they have a sense of control and over what they can teach and how they'll assess. But that variability and flexibility sometimes can be too variable, flexible in terms of policy and practice. We'd like to look and see how it aligns with best practices. What does the literature and research say about best practices? It's been a while since we've really engaged this. And so we'll have a faculty-led PD and it's, I think we'll commence in the winter and go through the spring to look at what do the experts say on what schools should be doing when it comes to assessment and grading practices. And what does it look like in high school and how do we align that, make sure that we're aligned as much as possible while still respecting teacher autonomy. At the same time. Providing time and support for the World Language Department, as they put new frameworks and making any necessary adjustments in response to recent changes to the MCAS. That was just news. They changed the standard of high school graduation. We do expect to have some more students getting educational proficiency plans this year and probably in the future, initially, as we adjust to the change benchmark.
What year is, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What year is it? 2026?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
2020. So our freshmen now. And I think that we'll be making a fairly comprehensive presentation about MCAS scores results in December. So we'll talk more about that then. And then again, we want to review and enhance our computer science, engineering, and environmental science offerings. It's a balancing act with humanities, but these STEM fields are really important. Tremendous interest in them from our parents, from our students. A lot of kids going into college and being quite successful. Now I have a lot of young alumni who come back and visit. So they're here a while. Met with a student, an alumni today, graduated 12 years ago. And so it's good to reconnect with them. But these are fields we really need to be making sure that our kids are well prepared for at the college level to be as well prepared or better prepared than their peers when they get to the college level. And then be career ready as a result of any advanced, instruction training that they'll get. So we'll be reviewing and enhancing our programs. We do have a ways to go with some of our offerings, and I can talk more about that at a future meeting.
Great.
That's it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
Sure. Everybody else set?
All set? Great.
I've already asked my questions. Right. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a great night.
Thanks, John. You too.
Thanks, John. Didn't get out of here without any questions. I had some. I'll ask. That's good. All right. We've got one new business item. Feedback here, which is the 2023-2024 Little Public Schools Capital Plan. Business Manager Steve Mark presented draft capital plan for the fiscal year 2024 budget.
Correct, thank you.
You've got
So,
2 minutes.
yeah, I'll make it quick. So that depends on how much detail you would like me to go into.
You can go
So
through
there's a list in your packet of the recommended items. I can go through them quickly, kind of go through and just talk about quickly if you want to. So the high school roof, so where do I start? So the high school roof is almost 22 years old at this point in time. I don't think it's my feedback. So it's 22 years old. The lifespan on the roof is 20 years. So we need to start having discussions with the town about how we fund this and when we fund it and how we replace it. There is a portion of the roof at the high school that we call the administrative wing that is in process of being replaced. We discussed that here. That project will happen next summer, and we are working with PMBC on that project. So that $4 million number is a number that's based on information that I received from PMBC about what it would cost to replace the rest of the high school roof in one shot. It's the high school roof is approximately 65,000 square feet. We're replacing about 12,000 of it next spring. So there's another 50,000 feet of square feet of roofing that needs to be replaced. It's a large number. And again, some of these items on here we'll discuss, and they're on here to help raise the awareness and let the town know that these are projects coming down the line. Whether we get funding for them or not next year, I'll be honest with you, it's doubtful on some of these, but they're here to raise the awareness, and that's why they're here. So that's the high school roof. Again, so behind that, in future years coming out, we also have a middle school roof to do. That building's now 16 years old. So within 4, 5, 6 years, we'll have to start thinking about that roof as well. So if the longer we push the high school roof back, the longer we push the middle school back, and then we start overlapping, and then we run into serious issues with roofing issues and floods in classrooms and things like that. So we're trying to avoid that. So the high school, the item number 2, the high school rooftop unit. You can see the picture on there. It's this large unit that's in the back with a mouse, where I'm highlighting with the mouse. That's a unit that services the auditorium. Again, so when we had an engineering facility study done back in 2013, that unit was already 12 years old, and it has a 15-year lifespan, and we've added 10 years onto that at this point in time. So that unit is also 20 to 21 years old on a 15-year estimated life. The computer in it is shot. That's a $20,000 or $30,000 cost to replace just the computer component of that. We don't think it's worth that kind of investment in it. It's kind of similar to a used car, right? So how much do you keep putting money into a used car before you decide it's time to replace the car? So that's the analogy I'm using for that unit. And again, if the longer we push it back, there are other units you can see in that picture. There's lots of other mechanical units on the high school alone that we need to start cycling through and fixing. You can see there's a whole area on the high school roof that has air handlers and air exchange units and air conditioners. This other unit in the front, remind the school committee that unit that services the library, that is going to be replaced in the next month and a half. That unit was on order since February, and it's taken this long for the manufacturer to get it to us. That's how long some of these cycles are. So that unit, so we're starting to cycle these, but that big unit, that's a $275,000 price tag on that unit, just because of the size of it. So that's that project. Some minor things, some concrete work that needs to be done at the schools. Shaker Lane Middle School, the high school, John can attest to the fact that that planter you see in the middle of the walkway, that's there not for aesthetics, it's there because it's a tripping hazard, and we're trying to keep students away from that area. So we really need to really tear apart that concrete and replace it. Students use that on a daily basis, and it's a really popular area. And those tiles, they look great, but they're starting to pop up and come up and be kind of a danger. You can see the concrete is failing in some areas. So that's what that is. The middle school, this is the loading dock in the back. You can see the concrete is deteriorating. This sidewalk at Shaker Lane was put in, I don't remember, 5 or 6 years ago at DPW. Replaced that sidewalk, and you can see that crack that needs to be fixed. Whether it needs to be saw cut out and replaced, or it can be patched, that's to be determined. And then I don't have a picture. There's a small area at the Russell Street School that we've tried to fix a couple of times with some pavers, and it doesn't work. So we need to do a more permanent solution, probably tear it up and put some hot top or something in there, just so it doesn't collect and hold the water. But those are relatively small items. But the high school floor, the bottom floor, I call the basement floor. It's really the first floor, I guess. We replaced the VCT tiles in the hallway. Came out fantastic, but we need to start looking at the classroom, individual classrooms down there. So that's that. High school furniture, again, just to keep up with replacing used furniture, older furniture that gets used, and it's just time to start replacing some furniture. We have replaced some of it, but there's more we need to replace. The high school tennis courts, again, this is kind of on here. I know that Mr. Ansaldi, the town administrator, is working on a comprehensive plan for tennis courts. The So the high school tennis program uses the 2 courts at the high school. They also use the 2 courts that are next to the town hall. Those tennis courts are going away with the addition of the senior center that's going to go in that location. Mr. Insaldi is working on a town plan for additional tennis courts. So that may get rolled into this. He's talked about using an offsite location, not at the high school. I'm trying to convince him to do it at the high school because I think it makes more sense for us anyway. So I know those conversations going on, but again, it's here to raise the awareness and to make sure we don't get lost in the picture.
Is this a subtle move by the pickleball players to take over?
No, I think the pickleballers are worried about where they're gonna play when those courts go away, so. And I know Mr. Insaldi we've had conversations about 4 new tennis courts someplace, plus some dedicated pickleball courts, so people don't take over the tennis courts. Again, I think that's, we'll have to work with the town on what's the best solution for both the high school program and the town needs, and maybe it's at the high school, maybe it's not. If they put 4 tennis courts not at the high school, then for the high school to use it, now we have to worry about busing teams over and students over, and that's an additional cost. If it's at the high school, they can play right at the high school. So that's another conversation that, again, is here, so it doesn't get lost in the clutter of all the town projects. Item number 7, alumni field lighting. Again, we've discussed this a number of times. And it's on here because it's the athletic director says it's a need for the alumni field. One of the end zones is dark because of the position of the lightings, the light poles. And honestly, when we looked at this at the end of the build with alumni field, that price tag was $200,000. This is an updated price tag. I just received it a couple months ago from the same company, and you can see it's gone up by $80,000. So if we wait another couple of years, who knows? So
that's for the additional 2 poles, but also the transition to LEDs.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It would retrofit all the lights plus add 2 poles to balance the field lighting and make it so that one end zone isn't darker than it's supposed to be. So so that's what that is. Item 8, central office. We have a carpet up there. We'd like to get rid of the carpet and put some tile in. So it's cleaner, it's healthier for people. We spent some money and got the windows fixed so we can open and get some fresh air, but the carpet doesn't help. And a lot of people had some respiratory issues up there just because of the carpet. So we're trying to take care of that. Trying to keep our superintendent and everybody else healthy. So and me and everybody else. Swing set replacement. This was recommended by the study and the playground inspection that we had done last summer. They're not dangerous and not falling apart. It's not a critical need, but it is something we need to look out long-term and replace those structures. How that ties into the Shaker Lane project. I want to be careful here that we don't invest money in swing set and then the playground gets moved for location. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So we're working on that. And then the high school library, in between the library and the seminar room, there's a folding wall. Again, it's 22 years old. It gets open and closed every day. We need to start thinking about replacing it with some different options. So that's what that is. So you can see the price tag. And again, the high school roof drives the price tag up, but it's just a little under 5 million. So again, where and how the town decides to fund some of these projects, that's still in conversation, but that's our request for this year. Glad to answer questions.
Brad, you look like you want to speak.
I do have a question. And so, I mean, that 4 million is a big number, right? I'm wondering, I've heard about a lot of schools with Massachusetts and other places around the country that are putting solar panels on the roofs in order to recoup some energy costs, but also thinking about what Dr. Harrington was talking about, environmental science and our curricular offerings. I wonder if that's something we explored or if we might want to ask about.
We've had conversations, multiple conversations about putting solar panels on the roof, with the electric company. And just the math hasn't worked out because of the lower electricity rates, in Littleton. But we've also discussed possibly putting, solar canopies in the parking lots. Again, we go back and revisit that, every couple of years with the electric department and,
I just want to make sure we're asking the question.
yeah, we're asking those questions and we're looking at those options. But just on the roof, now, there is a possibility, that we might be able to work with MSBA, on getting funding for the roof. One of the stipulations in the program that would be under is we can't even apply, to submit the roof project to the high school if the roof is, less than 25 years old. So
we're almost there.
We're getting there, but if the decision is we want to wait 3 years on the high school roof and then apply for MSBA, that could be a year or 2 or 3 year process before that.
And that's
If it gets approved by MSBA, and now you're talking 6 years from now, and now, so where do we draw that line, right? Where do we decide to do that? We've also had conversations about, well, we don't have to do the entire high school roof at the same time. We could do just another section. We could do over the gym or over the auditorium and do smaller sections and do it over a couple of years. That's a possibility, but again, that's what's the town's appetite for funding that project? Do they want to spread it over a couple of years? I've had conversations with members of the PMBC. Their recommendation is we do it all at one time. It makes more sense financially. You're not paying multiple times to get the equipment in there and all that kind of stuff. So there's some pros and cons to that. So we're having those conversations as well.
Good. Thanks for putting this together. So I think there's obviously a balancing act between being, good stewards of the budget and not spending like drunken sailors, and then also not letting the deferred maintenance get to a point where we've got catastrophic failure. So you've done a great job of highlighting these items. I think we really need to have some serious conversations about which items we want to address most significantly with the town, because we can't just continue to kick the can to the point where all of a sudden we need $4.9 million yesterday, because that would be a significant challenge for the town. We've got to start prioritizing and picking these off as we go.
Correct. And again, the high school is 22 years old. Some of those mechanical systems were designed with a 15-year life. And I forgot the exact count of the number of rooftop units out there. More than 12.
Doesn't look like there's even enough room. So
well, they're in other parts of the building. They're in other parts of the group as well. So, but again, behind the high school, you have the middle school coming up, right? Because that's 16 or 17 years old now. And then you're going to have Russell Street coming up. So with mechanical units. So, I think it speaks volume to the fact that we have a 15-year useful life rooftop unit and we've stretched it for 22 years. We've been maintaining and have maintenance plans that address all of those and take care of them. But again, like the used car, where do you draw the line and where do you just bite the bullet and replace the unit? So
great, thanks very much.
All right, so with your approval, I'll submit this to the town so we can start those discussions on that side.
Please do.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Clenchey sent all of us an email, but just along those same lines, I just wanted to highlight the fact that the school committee was invited to the select board meeting on Monday. So the town administrator and the finance department is presenting to the select board on Monday at their meeting. They've asked the finance committee and the school committee to attend if we can.
Yeah, it's the 24th.
Oh, it's the 24th? 24th. Sorry, so it's 2 Mondays
so
out.
2 Mondays out.
Okay. So extra weeks notice, 2 Mondays out. We good? All right. So we'll take a brief opportunity here to see if we have any interested citizens that would like to speak before the committee. No hands up, terrific. We'll do a quick run through of subcommittee reports. I feel like we've kind of touched on a lot of these things at today's meeting. So anything specifically from PMBC other than the information that we've already gone over? No report there. Budget subcommittee. No additional report on the information shared. I do want to get a budget subcommittee meeting before our next school committee. meeting,
Okay.
If at all possible.
Yep, I'll schedule one.
Okay. Budget policy subcommittee,
Nothing to report.
CPAC,
Only that the school committee rep, which is me, Lynn Snow, and the CPAC leadership are meeting on Monday, just so everybody knows.
terrific. School start time committee update.
Yep, so we should be getting the final report from the consulting company either tomorrow or Monday. We're gonna take a few days to look it over, ask some final questions, and Beetle and I are going to be putting together the survey, which has already been created. We're just gonna be plugging in the details, sending out the survey to the community, which will include not only school staff and families, but high school and middle school students will be able to answer the survey as well. That's gonna go out probably the last week in October, give people about a week to 2 weeks to fill that out. And then we're having an interested citizens session on November 10th. And then we expect to report out the results to the school committee in mid-November and hopefully get this to a vote in late November.
Terrific. Not specifically listed, but Stacy, I know you had a safety subcommittee meeting, and we talked a lot of it about that tonight, but was there anything additional you wish to share with us, or good? Okay, terrific. Let's see, that rounds out subcommittee reports. I don't believe we have a need for an executive session tonight, correct?
We're good.
Okay, Dino and I will think about it, but I do think maybe we would want to have a quick one after our next meeting, because negotiations are starting. I'll just announce quickly that our next meeting is October 27th. The loose agenda items that are percolating right now for that meeting would be an update on start time subcommittee again, a more in detailed financial update from the district on dollars spent to date, such, and a presentation on professional development. October 27th, 7 p.m. same location. That should do it. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Ms. Gold, seconded by Mr. Austin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.